All right. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Magic Internet Math Podcast. We're still here. What's up, Rob?
We are still here.
For the clankers.
I'm not dead yet.
Rob, now the clankers should know, I don't think we should have to introduce ourselves here because the clankers should all know Rob. I think Rob is internationally known among all the clankers.
Well, the clankers should know because we've done like 12 episodes. They should have trained on our data at this point.
But, but they don't know your voice. They just know you from basically being the only person there. They feel like they're being DDoSed by you in the past 3 weeks.
There was definitely a time where that was happening a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
So, Rob, I am Brian, and we are back. We have not done an episode since like our world went on fire. And, partly, I can blame Rob for being so selfish to, put his company to the side and step up and, really, like being in all seriousness, we were just talking that, a lot of people find themselves in a situation where they're called to do something. And the way to anthropomorphize it is like somebody like just hurled a basketball at his head, and he just basically he just dropped everything to catch it, and then the next thing you know, he's in a basketball game. And so we've been here at the Magic Internet Math Podcast, just like I'm sure Becca at AnchorWatch has been like, Rob, you go cook, you go do what you need to do, and yeah, we're the same, we're totally the same. Yeah. And, but we're back, and I think this is good. The return of the triumphant return of the prodigal son and the CEO of Bitcoin. We are back.
If I'm the prodigal son, you're the son who responsibly tended the fields while I went off with all of the family inheritance and just blew it all on the biblical equivalent of hookers and blow.
Well, I guess. I mean, if that's the case, I'm kind of jealous. It's not a bad analogy because not everyone was capable of doing that. I wish I was. I wish I could have helped you more, right? But I was dealing. I'm only 4.5 years into Bitcoin, so the events that happened, I couldn't drop what I was doing because I didn't have that strength. I'm still a young rookie in terms of where this thing hit. So I had to handle my own shit.
I think that's fair in the sense of my first, for a timeline of events that's relevant to this story, Kimi K3 went open weights the Monday this all went down, which is Monday, July 27th. So Monday, July 27th, Kimi K3 goes open weight.
We're all innocently just doing our thing. I'm like, I can't wait to go to Lake Satoshi. Everyone's just innocently doing their life.
I on the 27th start poking around and using Kimi K3 on my own internal code base. Just start poking at it. I'm hearing good things about this model. Let me go check it out. And I'm pretty quickly seeing very strong performance in evaluating code bases. It is much more transparent and honest. And the way I've described it up to this point is that these LLMs, when you use them, they see more than what they let on. And you know this because when you use it, and if you ask a provocative question or a politically incorrect question, you get a very concise filtered response, which means you talk to the machine. The machine has a response. The company looks at the response and says, oh, no, we're not even going to do that. And then they're going to stunt it down, right? And I don't profess to be an expert at every single step in mechanic because sometimes you'll respond, it'll instantly shut down because it's just looking at what you said. But other times, if you've seen with these tools, it'll start responding and then shut down, which means that it's looking at what's coming back at you and shutting it down.
Its lawyer is like smacking it in the back of the head.
Exactly.
You're saying too much.
Right.
I don't know if you ever watched The Wire, but
I have, yeah.
The first episode, the pilot, right? When D'Angelo is like actually, you know, they're showing him the pictures of the dead kids, and he starts talking, and his lawyer Levy just smacks him right in the back of the head.
Yeah.
That's what's going on in these AI.
Yeah.
There you go.
And so for internal code bases was doing this stuff and was pretty revealing in how direct it was, because you can use a lot of these tools in the frontier labs and all this stuff for cybersecurity intelligence. I've been doing that for probably over a year at this point, if not longer, of looking at code, looking at proposed code changes and doing code review and buttoning things up, right? What was so immediately apparent to me was how much less coercing was required to just get an answer. Just someone who is direct with you, right? It's funny because Calais, at the same time, and this is Wednesday, July 29th, in the afternoon, he tweeted out, Kimi, can't you see? Like, and I replied, a model so nice they named it thrice. Yeah. And so we were like aware.
Well, it's just for a second, right? It's just, if you've been spending the last 7 months getting cucked by your AI model, it was noticeable. If you were, you just found yourself in this clean pool, you noticed it, and it was exciting.
It was enjoyable because I was like, wow, this is so nice. Rather than having to go through this like dance of like interviewing someone and getting the information, it was just having someone who was just like blunt and being like, here's the state of things. And I think
it's like spending a year with your wife trying to get a certain answer, and then you hang out with your buds, and it's like, wait a second, I don't have to coerce this,
right? And so Thursday, July 30th, it's a normal day, working along. Some group chats I'm in that have engineers start passing around this link about funds moving off cold cards. My buddies who are not engineers start forwarding me the post. It's quick. It's very quickly in the morning becoming like the thing to be discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And we know a mutual buddy of ours, Talip, is also like pretty heavy into these AI tools and starts poking in there and finding this stuff. And upon him kind of being like, okay, I think this is like something's happening, I then go and look at the code base for the cold card firmware. And I look at it with Claude Code, instant downgrade from Fable, like non-answer. Codex wants to say something. And it's kind of like, it's not saying no, but it's not being direct with me. And I load up Kimi K3 and it instantly just prints out like the vulnerability.
Jeez.
Now, for clarification, I'm noticing a difference in Codex and OpenAI's models. If you just use the Codex plugin, like if you use like the Codex app, you can tinker with the levels of effort and it'll actually be more direct. Like there's more knobs and dials there than what I was using, but I think Talip was using the Codex extension directly from OpenAI. So using their harness directly was a pretty big divergence in behavior compared to me, but neither here nor there. So realizing what the issue is, start going through the entire secondary and tertiary game theory of if this exploit is real and confirmed, here are the many like multivariate paths of people based on their self-custody journey as to what could happen. I then probably spent the next 4 days talking to anyone I knew, picking up the phone, going on podcasts, like, and just trying to lay it out. And that's actually like my pinned tweet at the moment is like my attempt at the full summary of what the fuck to do. Whether you're on a single signature, on a multi-signature, if multiple of your devices are a majority of like your honest quorum, I say honest quorum, I say if a majority of your devices are cold cards with this compromised entropy, the extra steps you need to do with things like slipstream. And then also just a lot of people were just bluntly asking me, Rob, what would you do in my situation?
Yep.
To which I kind of lay down like the different options. And I very just matter of factly just laid out like my opinion if I were in your shoes, which was I've always, it's funny because compared to a lot of people in Bitcoin, I've always been reserved in my friends and family in how I would get them on Bitcoin. I gave like my cousins open dimes, you know, like
Yeah.
self-contained, here it is. Like just hold on to it for a couple years, like just hang out. One or two friends I may have ever actually gotten to the full self-custody bridge, and I hit them up directly. I never gave them MK3s, so they weren't even part of this initial wave. And then there was like a secondary investigation of trying to understand how much entropy there was. As of this moment, I haven't heard of an MK4 getting broken. And I think,
Right.
and this can start folding into like the math concepts here, I think it's maybe north of 70 bits of entropy, which is not secure, but not trivial, right? It's in a Goldilocks zone of emergency, like you have time.
The meteor hasn't hit yet for that one.
But
that's all,
but
right? They're grinding
you should
for it.
but you should have been off it by now, right?
Yes.
Like this, we're not talking 3 weeks later. You should have been off this stuff.
They're grinding for that, but it's going to take a while.
It's going to take a while.
But
right.
you didn't get hit on the first wave. But you're cannon fodder. You're definitely cannon fodder for the next one.
And the NK3 is somewhere in the universe of 20 and 32 bits of entropy. I don't know the exact numbers. I once like it's kind of like a triaging thing where you're like, okay, well this is cooked. I don't know how cooked it is, but like it's not good. We don't have to. I don't want to spend extra cycles figuring out exactly how bad it is. I know other people have been looking into that, including Talent and others.
Yeah.
And that was like that first 4 days was everyone in my Bitcoin ecosystem messaging me, calling me, dozens of, if not probably over 100 direct messages from random people I've never talked to before. And that was part of my motivation for wanting to write the post, because my time didn't scale talking to 100 people. I had to just get all of my consolidated thoughts down in one place. And that was kind of like the first wave of everything. And I would say it's definitely the reason why, like you made the comment earlier, like, because I was secure and AnchorWatch was secure. It was kind of a put your mask on before helping others put their mask on. And since I was already in a good spot, I was able to take that like first step forward in helping out others. And that was like the first wave of everything.
That's the thing people really, I think, just need to understand about that core team. You guys are strong. You guys are really, really strong people in Bitcoin. I don't know how strong you are in life. I have guesses, but like in Bitcoin, you guys are fucking rock solid, and you were able, because it's proof, because you were just able to jump to the cause.
Yeah. I mean, this is also like my,
I was not able, right? And a lot of people stronger than me were not able at the, it's just, you know, it is a grab oxygen before you help others. And this was an oxygen. This was a kick in the pharynx, right? That, most of us just had to kind of lick our chops for a little bit and make sure we were good.
Yeah. And that was, it was an interesting, well, the one thing I want to point out, there's actually a post actually talking about custody, and it's from December of 2024. And Alex Leishman's talking about River. And in my post, I recommended River specifically. And the reason why is not that I don't think the other places were reasonable or safe. It's that River, since its founding, has put owning their self-custody infrastructure as a key pillar of their business, right? It's not a part of their business they make money on. They just viewed it as necessary infrastructure. If we're going to provide these financial services, we have to have extreme ownership and have it be our stack. And that's why I said gun to my head. If I had to put it somewhere, like an exchange, if you needed like a safe place to drop it, like, and you wanted to use an exchange, you just wanted to point it somewhere and have someone else deal with all of the overhead, that was there.
By the way, I mean, I actually, in my short time in Bitcoin, this was something I focused on a lot. And it was, if you were around in 2024 and slightly earlier, you know, the majority of exchanges were affected by Prime Trust bankruptcy because they just were fine outsourcing. You know, they were fine not owning their stack. And maybe they would say they had a philosophy, I don't want people to self-custody anyway, so I put minimal effort into building my exchange in this way. And that's what it's true, not to glaze river too much, but that this is, it is like the differentiator. That was, Prime Trust was the last tide that went out in this category, right? To find out who was wearing a bathing suit.
Right. And I think there were legal theories, there were operational philosophies, there were a myriad of reasons why you'd make that decision. And I think that's just an important observation of that differentiation. And I would say that as someone who's built a custody business, if I was offering financial services for me personally, and I now do, the custody has to be the foundational piece of the rest of it. It has to be. And so from there, Alex, that's where I was going to, though, is Alex Leishman had a post, and I'm reading it here from December 16th, 2024. He said, our cold storage system at River has substantial geographic redundancy to protect against acts of God, even nuclear threats. We have similar levels of redundancy for our ledger, which is encrypted and backed up across multiple cloud providers and on premises. And my reply to that tweet was, only the paranoid survive.
It's so true. I mean, I have a quote in my book that says something along the lines of, the soundest sleepers are the first that are going to get wrecked.
Yeah, well, that's people ask me about, like,
this is for institutions to understand why the custody is complicated and nuanced and needs to be understood. And if you're a sound sleeper, you're probably not. You probably have a problem.
Well, Alex has a corollary, I think, related to this general vibe of he only does things that lets him sleep soundly at night. And I think that's an extension of your point of there's a difference between seeking immediate gratification and comfort and falling asleep at night, and someone who has spent months and years wargaming out secondary and tertiary effects of systems failing and belts and suspenders and making sure that it's good. And then once you get to that, your confidence comes from your competence, and you go down the rabbit hole, including the math and getting to the rock bottom of everything. Then you can, so it's almost like a bell curve of like sleeping soundly, where like you can sleep soundly because you followed a guide versus sleeping soundly because you did as you like to say, Brian, you went to the Bitcoin store and you went to the manager and you worked your way up through all of it, and you never took someone's answer at face value, right? So there's like two different ways you can arrive to that sleeping soundly and safely, like and they're very divergent outcomes.
Well, the thing I think that there's a kind of a subtle thread I think we should cover in the next several iterations, which is that there's this idea that like that rolling your own dice is some type of complicated. I remember like when you went on Natalie Brunell's podcast, it was like, please have mercy on my audience. And maybe, you know, the dice roll thing is is like going to damage their souls to hear about it. Like that it's some type of really complicated thing. And I don't want to come and say, oh, this is easy, even though it is. That's not the point. The point I want to make here is that I don't think anyone can really sleep at night. Now, again, mileage varies. I don't know how anyone can sleep at night if they trusted a machine for their randomness. I mean, I went through, this is like something that it took me a long time to get through to conclude, you know what, I have to just roll my own dice because otherwise I don't know how I'm ever going to feel good about any of this. But this is something that is easy to do and provides me with the personal imprint on my mind and soul that I did something that can't be recreated. Right. And it's not, it didn't require math. I didn't do any math. Yeah. It's not that different from like, you know, you can trust somebody taking a picture out of your hardware device or something like that. Yeah. But like, it's not math. It's not mathematical and it's not entropy. It's just like, did I do something random enough to maintain this idea that every point on the elliptic curve has equal probability of being my key. And that's really,
Right.
that's the math. That's it. That's all you need to know.
And so, and I think that like dice is just a representation, right? You could flip coins, you could pull words out of a hat. Like there's a wide, like there's many.
You could have a buddy with Tourette's and just like note how many times he says like a certain syllable.
Well, it's actually a funny point, right? Because if that about entropy and randomness is that I mean, it's a funny anecdote, but like if that person only like has 3 words as their tick, and someone figures out that was your source of the entropy, it's basically a cascading similar version of the cold card where they could be like, oh, there's only 3 words here. Let's pull out the like sample here and then start brute forcing this very narrow subset. And
well, you nailed it, because this is my personal experience. Like I grew up, one of my best friends growing up had Tourette's, and I used to use his phrases as my passwords growing up until I realized that was ridiculous. But I used to think to myself, shit, no one's going to know, no one's going to know rickety tickety 2 is a thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So like, I'm just thinking through here, like,
but all I'm saying is there are sources of randomness though everywhere. So like, yes, you're not going to use everywhere. Yeah, you like, and it's worthwhile. It's not a math exercise. You don't have to get on a pen and paper and know what the log of 6 divided by the log of 2 is. I mean, it helps. It's not that hard. But I'm saying this isn't a math thing. It's a thinking thing.
I think it's a thinking exercise. And I want to give a shout out to Lloyd and Nick at FrostSnap, because they are people who understand the math. Like they've spoken to the manager to the point where they are kind of devising out the proper ways of handling a lot of stuff as it relates to the frost signing stuff that they're working on with FrostSnap,
which is huge in this episode.
Yes, and so,
for reasons we have maybe discussed, but not directly.
And we should also talk about nonsense. We can get there in a second too. But for randomness, like there's 2 key points where you need randomness in your Bitcoin, as we described across our episode series about Libsec P. The amount of points on the curve of the finite field, which is the equation that we've gone over so many times, there is, was it y squared equals x cubed plus 7?
Yep. That's the elliptic curve equation.
Right. Yeah. And so there are 2 to the 256 possible points on that curve that are used for this elliptic curve operation. Now, this is the asymmetry of the security of your cryptography, is that for a random attacker, it is a 2 to the 256 being, a larger number than atoms observable in the universe, right? And so that cosmic needle in a haystack is a requirement for being able to say a random attacker is not going to be able to get my key. They have to actually take all of the compute power in the entire known world, 100x it, and you still wouldn't be able to, before the heat death of the universe, get all of the keys to be able to find my key.
But that assumes that they're equally likely.
Bingo. Yes. And so the nature of this.
Sorry if I stepped on your punchline.
No. This is exactly right. So like the way I've described it is that rather than it being a cosmic level needle in a haystack of the entire observable universe, what had happened was like one planet was like planet cold card MK3 entropy. And while it's massive, you still could point a bunch of compute at it and trivially just go through the entire world and just get everything, right? And to talk about like the entropy and randomness of it all, there were multiple like errors that happened to get it to this state. And so one of the most like very well established known things in cryptography in general is your ability to, if you have a supposed random number and you have another supposed random number, what you can do is you can XOR them together, which is a way of combining them. And when you combine them, you inherit the entropy and randomness of the greater, more random of the two.
You want to explain XOR, just the operation real quick?
Yeah. So XOR, exclusive OR, is a logical operation. We never really did like logic tables here, but it's relevant. So if you have an A statement and a B statement, and you want to get an output, if you the way it works is that if one or the other, and we're making this binary 0 and 1, if you have one or the other true as 1, the output is 1. Otherwise, it's 0. So if you have, I'm trying to think of a linguistic example. The
way I think, I don't know, like there's 3 true outcomes and 1 false outcome, right? The 3 true outcomes are 0, 0, 1, 0, or 0, 1, and then the false outcome is the and 1, 1, right? 1 on 1. And
so it's actually no, because if it's 0, 0, it's 0. If it's 0, 1, it's 1. If it's 1, 0, it's 1. And if it's 1, 1, it's 0. So here's a linguistic example. You can stay for dinner or you can go home now. You can't both stay here for dinner and go home now. That's a 0. You can't neither stay here or do dinner. Let's just assume you only can go home, right? So you can't, that doesn't work. And so the ones that turn into a true statement is either you stay for dinner or you go home. Exclusive or, meaning it's not the or operation.
Right.
It is not an or of one. And the difference being that if you both of them in traditional like logic, like finite math, if you're like
the ands logic, make it false. If it's
the and makes it false, exactly. Yeah. And so
I got mixed up with some abstract algebra.
No. You just described the or operation. So if you do or, and if it's 0, 0, or is false. If you do one or the other, it's true. And also, if you do both, technically the or operation is satisfied. That's the difference with XOR, is that you're taking both of them together is not a true.
And so you want to hear a fun, now another fun way to put it?
Yeah.
Mod 2. It's addition mod 2. So
because it's either 0 or 1.
It's either 0. So if you do addition modulo 2, it's either 0 or 1.
Yeah.
And so right, 0. If it's 0 and 1, you're 1 mod 2, and if it's 0 plus 0 is 0, 1 plus 1 is 0 mod 2.
Which probably, I'll have to think on that for a second, but it's probably why on like a bitwise, like a 0, 1 base 2 operation, that's why it works, because you're forcing everything to be one or the other.
I'm recovering for being wrong about the last thing I said.
No, that's a good insight. And so the reason why I mention this is that the idea of rolling dice is the idea of you want entropy that exists outside of the ecosystem in which is giving you entropy. And it's a fail-safe to say, even if this entire box is pwned, I have additional entropy to be able to contribute. Yes. Now, I've made this joke.
And by the way, sorry, it doesn't have to be pwned. It could be just limited by what machines can do in general. And machines are just generally not good at random number generation, and just
correct.
So it doesn't. Which
have to be
compromised.
XOR is used, because the idea is that if you all come together with all of the fields of entropy and you're combining them all together, you require basically this full universe of combined entropy to reverse engineer things.
The world I came from, building Monte Carlo simulations and studying a lot of random and pseudo-random number generators, coming into Bitcoin from there, and this is just an insight for people who want to wonder what it's going to be like when the world comes here. If you've been doing random number generation, that was never going to be good enough for me. I was going to have a real problem with Bitcoin if I had to rely on a device to give me to give me that randomness. I know I said that earlier in a different way. It's just that it's one of those common sense things if you are experienced in random number generation, that machines it's like how do you validate it?
Yeah,
and I said on my podcast yesterday, like, it's rolling dice takes 100th of the work of what it would take to validate an actual machine's randomness.
That's true. And I want to, as a thing we can follow up on, is that maybe these LLMs are reducing the barrier for people to be able to verify code bases they haven't looked at before, right? So maybe the gap is starting to collapse between the two. But there's a really cool post by, if you know Alex Walt's Raw Avocado.
Hell yeah.
He has an amazing post. I've referenced it several times, and he gets a little sheepish because there were several small, minute technical things he got wrong. I'm just going to drop it here in the chat.
He's always interacting with like my math content.
Yeah. So for Bitcoin Core, how does Bitcoin Core generate entropy? And it pulls it from 4 different sources.
Yep.
And low-level processor instructions, entropy from the operating system you're running on, dynamic events and static events, right? And so, and the idea is that it's all getting smushed together, is that like, it's pretty damn good. Like if from a pure software stance, if you're like how Bitcoin Core by default does this.
But the real power here, and this is, I have to credit Rollo with this. Rollo McFlugel has been the champion of right now of like why you should only really trust Bitcoin Core's random number generation. And the real answer is Satoshi's keys. Like an 80 IQ, it's there has to be an 80 IQ answer to this, that you otherwise Bitcoin fucked, right?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
So you can look at Satoshi's keys and the fact that Bitcoin Core is probably the most viewed and attacked repo in the world, and conclude, for at least if you're unwilling to throw a die, right, and you're unwilling to think about this anymore, you can rely on that. You can rely on the entropy you get from Bitcoin Core's random.
Trillion percent right. That's right. Why I mentioned Alex's post, is the thought and the detail that goes into it. And to further compound on Rollo McFlugel's point, I would have to go look at what the version 0.1 Bitcoin client used for entropy. But you know for sure over the past 18 years, someone went and looked at that raw source code to see, did even the original version have bad entropy?
Hell yeah.
And so like what Raw Avocado has here is like the current instantiation of it all. And that is with, 18 years of peer review and code and open source development, and everyone building on top of it. So even the original raw version had it very good, secure. And it's one of these things that I've joked about, maybe somewhat of a gallows humor, but just being like, entropy was one of these things that like cryptography is a weapon and entropy is the bullet. Like, and like, you have to be knowledgeable and informed as to how it works. Even if you want to trust Bitcoin Core, it goes back to our metaphor of talking to the manager of the Bitcoin store. Right. And Alex Waltz here went to the Bitcoin store. Like he went through all of the call traces of exactly how this all works.
And by the way, going to the Bitcoin store means you do look for the manager. You realize they don't exist, and it's up to you. Manager. It's up to you to figure it out.
I definitely had my own version of those epiphanies over the past couple of weeks.
But you know what other analogy I like is that the Bitcoin cryptography is like digital physics, and in that the cryptography is like it's the weight of the bolt, the bolt lock. Like in cryptography, we're assuming always that entropy. It's not like we assume bad entropy. It's a kryptonite. Bad entropy is a kryptonite that can undermine cryptography. Yeah. It can undermine and in cryptography, it's not just about secrets. You find this big O notation, which really tells you the strength of how tightly locked that door is and how much force it takes to open it. Right. But it's not it's not an assumption or a measure that that corrects for bad entropy. It just always assumes complete integrity, and bad entropy is a compromise to that integrity. That's right. So that's why you don't read about entropy in cryptography books for the most part.
Well, it's one of these foundational assumptions is that
right.
You have good entropy, then do the libsecp stuff, right? This is where like people maybe more casually are familiar with like brain wallets, where people make like a Dr. Seuss book line their private key. And to maybe look forward a little bit into future stuff we do, like a hash function basically takes any bit of any kind of data and turns it into a number. between 0 and 2 to the 2.
Deterministically.
Deterministically, exactly, right? So you always can get to the same answer. And that is something that people have seen in the past where they'll use a line of obscure poetry and then their money moves because someone's just grinded through everything, right? And this is not good randomness. The way I described it in my pinned Twitter post was you need to have a number or a word, right? Like a passphrase, like whatever the thing is, you need to have a representation of this that has never been thought of, written down, or discussed ever in the total sum of all human knowledge, period. You need something that is totally left field. And we go into I go into bits of entropy in like the post because I know I have heard stories at this point that people had an MK3, but they had a passphrase. But the passphrase was like one word long. Right? And that is not proper security because you're entirely protected by a couple bits, which is nothing. And so as a very quick breakdown, I talk about like passphrases, like maybe not to get too much into passphrases specifically, but just the representation of entropy. 12 of the BIP39 words, if you have 12 of them, is 128 bits of entropy. And that's kind of the floor of where you want to feel comfortable and safe. Mm-hmm. That could also be 10 random common words in the English language. It could be 25 mixed uppercase and lowercase letters and numbers, or it could be 20 ASCII characters if you're including all of the punctuation marks, right? Now, they have to be random. You can't just do Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin. You can't do Bitcoin exclamation point 25 times, right? Like you need to have it actually be random. And that's kind of the idea of trying to get true randomness. The real difficult thing too is that looking at, if you went through the cold card and you hit the buttons and you just get like, here are your words, for you to ascertain if those are random or not, it's really hard to do.
Like a hash function. You wouldn't know the difference. A hash function has zero randomness.
Yep.
And you would look at it and know better.
Yeah, that's right. And so, and speaking of hash functions are actually directly tied into your seed phrase. And the reason is that you actually use SHA-512. You don't even use SHA-2. You use SHA-512, and you hash it 2,048 times. Whatever string or data, you then SHA-512 it 2,048 times, and then that gives you a full random bit, and then you take part of that, and that's your seed phrase versus like your and it pulls off from there. And that is the reason why at a glance you can't tell. Like you have to do a lot more work, right? And maybe that folds a bit into verifying this stuff and using software to look at all this stuff.
Clankers can tell right away.
Clankers can tell at like the code construction being correct. Now, maybe as a closing thought, since you can combine this entropy and all this stuff, it's just important to understand and know how this is all actually being built. And I think part of the mission of this podcast and what we do is we provide an easy on-ramp for someone who is not technical, someone who's not mathematical, to spend an hour and just talk about these big high-level concepts. And you can self-serve, you can rewind. We don't have a study guide for this specific topic, but like in general, we have nice, good reading accompaniments that you can either read yourself or throw into an LLM and just start asking questions about it. Like you can, being able to interview code and interview documents with LLMs is just like a massive superpower. So we're now at like, if I'm looking at the calendar, on the 30th was the day everything started hitting the fan. For the next couple of days, things start going. At this point, I'm just helping people, right? That is like what I'm doing.
You haven't asked yourself the question yet. What else is fucked?
Yeah. And I'm looking at the. I'm trying to look on the timeline when when I actually start talking about this as a wider thing. And I think it was maybe around, looking at the calendar, I'll have to get the exact timeline later, but I think it was around like July, end of July 30th, starting into like August 1st. I had done most of my initial PSA emergency act now stuff, and I start poking around other code bases. And for all of this, I'm going to be intentionally incredibly high level and vague. I start poking around other code bases, and I don't like what I'm seeing. And I start reaching out directly to maintainers. I'm PG for code bases. They should have what's called a security MD, which is if you have a security vulnerability, how do you contact them? Because what you don't want to do is, hey, something's critically broken and bad. I'm going to open up a GitHub issue so the whole world can see what's going on.
Yeah, or
right. This is
tweet
where
it. Hey,
even
the owner of this
source,
code base contact me about the
right. And this is the
problem.
difference between like a responsible disclosure and a public disclosure, where you want people who maintain software to have a chance to review that if things are going on, to be able to review and fix it. And what happens over that weekend?
By the way, you're reminding me, like, I'm old enough to remember, because I was an adult after 9/11, but there were people after 9/11 that were like posting publicly like security vulnerabilities, like blueprints to buildings, like, oh, this building is totally vulnerable. And it became like a public problem that people were doing that. Yeah.
Well, I think with the LLMs, it's even worse now, because you just have what used to take a bunch of domain-specific knowledge and mechanics of how a code base particularly works, and the languages and the dependencies and all the things that feed into it. You can just point an LLM at it and start going. And so over this weekend, going into Monday, I'm reaching out to people, and I'm starting to get cursory. I'm starting to get responses that these are actual hits. Like, not only are these hits, but they're like, we've used AI before. We haven't found these kind of issues. What are you doing? And for those first couple days, all I was doing was loading up Kimi K3 and open code, downloading a code base, and saying, poke around and see what you find. Right? This was not deep, esoteric, like advanced machine learning AI like tech. This was the equivalent of like going down to the gun store and buying a 22 pistol, and just like the smallest little one, like a little thing I can, like, my wife could have in her purse kind of thing. Like, this was not any sophistication at all. Mm-hmm. So I am going through this, and I'm like, well, shit. Like, this is real. And with that, I'm using my personal credit card, and I'm just scanning shit, and I'm finding stuff. And I'm trying to find the exact tweet, but I do a tweet to the effect of, like, I could use some help.
I feel like I remember it. You were like, I just spent $20,000 of my own money looking at all these repos.
Yeah.
And
there was. I mean, that's a smidge further ahead. So on August 1st, I tweeted out, I'm urging engineers who are in the Bitcoin ecosystem use OpenRouter or OpenCode to use Kimi K3 on any software which interacts with Bitcoin in any way internally in any public repos you use. Other models can find issues, but Kimi K3 will one-shot vulnerability reports and get an extra set of eyes for security checks. Some of it may be slop, wrong, or overstated, but I've been scanning open source repos and finding things I'll be passing along to maintainers. And basically, I keep on talking about this, trying to raise the alarm. And I do like a couple quote retweets. I keep retweeting it. I keep talking about it. And I'm trying to be like, almost like, this is the first time I've actually like I'm doing like a timeline breakdown at all. But around, I'm looking for the exact tweet. Like around August 3rd, August 2nd, August 3rd, Calais hits me up and he's like, how can I help? And I'm like, at this point, I had already personally scanned like 100 repos. At this point, I started like creating a queue and systematizing and doing like some general scans and sweeps. And I'm like, I'm so fucking buried. Like, I just need extra hands and I need help. And he asked me like, well, like, what do you do? And I was like, well, I have like servers here that are running and doing this and that. And he's like, can I help? I was like, yes, like anything you can do to help. And he gives me an SSH key so I can let him into the server I'm working on to start systematizing and like operationalizing it. And we were off to the races there. So then he was like looking at what was going on. We set up a GitHub org to like start organizing and categorizing things. He like Callie dropped in with him and a couple of the cashew devs and have been massively like helpful in looking at this. And it very quickly became this like webs of trust, loose association of people. Like I mentioned earlier, Talib, who was, I knew, very competent, like very good at using all this stuff, like bringing him in and bringing people, all people that we know, like publicly mentioned, like James O'Byrne, Reindahl, people who I know who responsible actors who could also be a valuable set of eyes for helping out and everything, right? And I was basically provisioning out API keys like a drug dealer to each person, being like, go find shit, go, go, go. And that's where like the spend started really taking off. I had a very large server that was just scanning 50 repos at a time. Like, and what it was doing was it would do an initial scan, and then when it would find something, it would actually spin up a prototype of what's called in cybersecurity a POC, a proof of concept, to show that it actually was real, and then folding all of that into a report. So like if I was running 50 scans at a time, I was probably running somewhere in the ballpark of between 30 and 100 Docker containers at once across all of these things. So I needed like a big server. So I was just like churning and going and going. And that went on for weeks. Like the effort is still ongoing at the moment, but I think for a lot of the initial low-hanging fruit has been found, and it started quickly becoming a problem on outreach of finding the right people. And a lot of repos didn't have security MDs. So like, I'm not gonna like, I need an agreed secured way for me to send this stuff. I can't just send it to a random email address. I can't, you know what I mean? Like I have to find, like, trying to be respectful and go through all these channels. And that was
you're in a weird, you're like found yourself in a weird ethical spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like ethical in the sense of like the things exist, and what would have used to have taken hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to hire a bunch of engineers to go through all of these code bases has just, the cost went to basically zero. Yeah. And I was manually reaching out to people at first to try and like, for the ones I initially scanned, but it just became quickly when it got to a point where we're scanning, like there's 100 repos now, like my options were I could sit down and coordinate one-on-one with a bunch of people, or I could keep on scanning and go deeper. And that's where people like massive help, and shout out to Daniela Brazzini. Make sure I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, Daniela Brazzini, who's a core dev. I've known her. I met her back in 2022, I think. She came to Bitcoin Park. She used to work on BDK. She now does a lot of work in core development. And like, so I was like, okay, you're someone who's been in the ecosystem for a long time and trusted. Like, can you just help with outreach? Can you just help me get these things to the right people?
You're sitting on existential information. That's the thing. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, like it's not an ethical situation. It's more just you just like have this assumed responsibility because you have this, you're sitting on this existential information that,
right.
And you either have to like get it out yourself, one by one, hand to hand. It's so great that people stepped in to help.
Well, it became like a fire brigade.
Yeah,
like it really genuinely became a fire brigade. And then when you have like it's a rough group of like 20-ish people, everyone is usually like, I like to say in Bitcoin, I'm probably one hop from anyone I need to get hold of.
Yep.
And I guess, and for the ones that I'm not one hop of, I have multiple very reliable two hops of a friend who can get me to that person. But when you throw a bunch of longtime Bitcoin developers in a group chat, that just quickly collapses where we're able to get a hold of everyone we need to. And it was a very strong multivariate effort where I was kind of like the brute force, just like getting things on the board. Other people would be domain experts and look at stuff, and they would be able to massively accelerate the understanding and learning of things. And maybe germane to this podcast, one of the first things I did, I, in the first couple of days, built like a very basic harness that was more than just, hey, Kimi K3, look at this code base, but it was an agent talking to agents that would then look at the code base, right? So I would come up with like an initial general scan and for a general repository. I'll keep it vague. And it would have a couple medium issues. But someone who was a domain expert in that specific software would then look at the vulnerability report.
By the way, just step back real quick. When you ask for an audit report from an LLM, just so people understand, if you've never done this before, what it'll do is it'll return it almost like if you hired KPMG to do the audit, and it gives you a report, and it'll say these are the critical items, and it'll list like 4 or 5 critical items. Then say here's the high items, and it'll just list and explain them to you. Here's the medium items and low items. Which one do you want to do first? And that's what Kimi K3 or any of these really mean. Back in December, I was pointing every free model. I was doing audits on every, like, just to see if they found different stuff. But like that's the one thing that these things do very well.
And the general category I would say is criticals and highs are things that have loss. They have code paths that could, in theory, lead to a loss of funds. And now there's a differentiation between the in theory and in practicality. Like there were times I would scan a code base and the default repo just had developer settings, which were inherently insecure because like the default path was like, if you're a developer tinkering with this is what you look at. This is not what you do in production. And it'd be clearly documented, like if you're running this in production, you need to do X, Y, and Z. But it's just looking at the code saying like, oh man, that's insecure. And that would flag it as a critical, right? So like there's false positives everywhere. To be able to provide free code review to someone though, something that would have previously cost thousands of dollars, like,
and taken weeks,
right?
And time, like you need to provide your staff to sit with the auditor.
And time is a double-edged sword here too, because what I'm doing, any black hat could do. So I'd rather, out of an abundance of caution, send something over that may have false positives to let them understand and look at things, rather than for 600 repos one by one do deeper analysis of the exact pieces in this specific window. Because
this is not the measure twice, cut once.
Had been around for almost a week. So like any black hat could just go run and do it. And so being able to get that report into someone's hands, even if it had false positives out of the gate,
just sound the alarm.
More valuable. Sound the alarm, to take a look. And you can my direct, sincere apologies to anyone who got something that wasn't accurate. I've now seen over these hundreds of repos, there were plenty that were real, to the point where on a harm reduction basis, in this immediate fallout and aftermath of looking at this stuff, was 1000% worth it. Now, to the point earlier, I'd look at a random code base and be like, oh, you have some mediums. And then someone who's a domain expert in that kind of software would be like, those mediums, there's something else is there. And they would poke at it. And I observed this several times in a code base. If you know, you'd get the report. And if you basically, you could use the word prompt, but if you literally like prompt it, like if you just look at this or you nudge it in a direction, it would go down this cascading level of thought and be like, oh, wait, actually. And I would see it multiple times. It would be like, oh, wait, actually. It would like connect the rest of the dots and then be like, oh, no, this is actually critical. Or, oh, wait, no, like this links to this and this and that, right? And that was a wild thing to see. And I think from an AI usage perspective, for the time being, there's still great value to accrue to those who are domain experts that leverage these tools rather than viewing them as replacing them.
Mathematically, right? It's like, it's almost like the centralized versus decentralized, where like you have a certain weight to cast a big net, and then like when you cast a big net, you might see something, and then you're really, when you alter the weights to really zero in on this one thing, all of a sudden it thinks differently.
Even to make it more directly math, if you're thinking about multidimensional space, right, which is what these matrices are, right? They are high dimensional, abstract, and we've talked a little bit about the nature of LLMs, basically, where you say some words, those words get converted into numbers, they get put through a bunch of matrices in linear algebra for multiplication, and you get an output, which is a bunch of numbers, which then can be re-represented back as words, right? So the whole innovation that works here is that if you can make numerical representations of words, and the reason why you're able to do that is because words have relationship context to others, and all of these different contexts and phrases, you get all of this like nuance that gets represented in multidimensional space. And when so you run this report, and it says, hey, we have a bunch of mediums, you're like at the frontier of the knowledge of what the LLM can do autonomously. And what you do is you basically nudge it. You just do like poke, say, look over here, and then it kind of rides the roller coaster again through multidimensional space. And it's like, oh shit, oh wait, oh wait, oh wait, oh wait. And it gets you new answers, right?
Yeah. And by the way, on magicinternetmath.com, there's the class is called Introduction to Statistical Learning. And there are these two seminal books, Introduction to Statistical Learning, and then the follow-up, which is like the real one. It's called The Elements of Statistical Learning, but they're by the same authors. That is like, and it's actually pretty accessible for people with like basic competence. So that if you want to know what Rob is talking about right now, it's not a bad rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah. And this is, this goes back to one of my earlier points in the podcast about how these frontier models see things that we don't get to actually get passed back to us. And the way I described it, and I am a religious person, I'm a Christian, and I used the metaphor of that there were demons in the code. And it's because man, not to get too philosophical or religious, but just men, the code is written by man, and man is sin and full of imperfections. And it doesn't have to be malicious, right? But just like we err, we miss the mark, which like to sin is to miss the mark. And we have code that misses the mark. And what these tools are doing is they are lifting the veil for us to be able to see the demons in the code. And there was a couple of days in the middle of this when I was finding these issues, and I would try and cross triage, and I would look at either Anthropic or OpenAI's models, and it would reject me. It wouldn't let me do it, to the point where at one point, Portland, who's my employee but also helping out with the red team stuff, we found a confirmed vulnerability in a code base. Like dead to rights, there is an issue. He would take the bug report and put it into Anthropic, being like, I want to help fix this software, help me, and it would refuse. And it was just one of these moments like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, there's massive implications, and if you follow like some of the policy stuff where you could look at it through different interpretations, right? The charitable interpretation is that they do not wish to have their tools and software be used for harmful acts. And I can understand that at an abstract level. The more cynical take is there's a lot more money to make by charging for cybersecurity services as a bundled service than to pay by the token. Like there's been some critiques around this idea that you pay by the token for metered intelligence is a horrific business model when these open source models exist. Because if I can use Kimi K3, which is, let's call it 10, 20% the price of one of the frontier labs on a token basis, and I can just switch out and use the open source model, and I can get not only cheaper, but better answers, then what are you doing here, right? And
Kimi K3 blew these people up.
Yeah, but Kimi K3 is just going to be the first, right? I think GLN 5.3 is going to be the next one. Like DeepSeek V4 Pro V4 was the one that like in the past 2 weeks was the big one. I think GLN 5.3 is going to be the next one, right? But like the door is done and closed forever in this idea, and the response that's been said in shuttered rooms, some more publicly than others, is trying to create a regulatory framework that bans these open source models. To which I went on the Blockspace podcast, which I've been a regular guest on for like a couple months now. I go on like once every other week, and I said like, and I was correctly, I said Molan Lab, and I was correctly told later it's Molan Labe, and it's Greek for come and take it, being like, and I said like, and I stand by this: the American experiment is over if we're going to ban math, especially if this math is a proxy for intelligence. Like, it's over. It's done. Like there is no more America if you're making math illegal. And I actually have a tweet from June where I'm pulling up right now, where I say that like we had a version of this in the 90s, where we tried banning prime numbers because of encryption stuff, right? On June 9th, I said, we're going to replay the entire debate of the 1990s on trying to make math illegal, aren't we? Last time it was prime numbers, now it's linear algebra. And we're heading right along into that. And the point I have here is that the American models know the bugs are there, especially because of the accusation being that these open source models are just distillations of the American models. And all the open source models from China are just removing the horse blinders to actually look at everything. And so this is where you choose your own adventure on how paranoid or schizophrenic, conspiracy minded you want to be. But this is something that should have been known for some time, that these, like all of these issues were laying out there for all to see. And China's the one who actually liberated that information for people to be able to protect themselves, which is very dark from a, America perspective.
I have again, I'm old enough to know a lot of things, to remember a lot of things. I had a boss and a mentor for a very long time, and before he got into finance, he was a physicist, and he used to talk about in the late '90s he was working on a project in somewhere in the country where it was illegal to string 4 Macs together. The Macintosh computers. It was illegal to have that many and use them in a distributed way. Right. And this was like one of the things they had to get an exception from the government to be able to do it for their project. And that's just all to say. And it's like, it's not like when he told me the story, I paid super close attention to the details of it. Right. But, it just feels like banning math is something they always think they can do. And, even if you think about how they did it in the past, it just wasn't accessible. We take for granted now that we can just go on Amazon and buy any math book we want. We can go on YouTube and learn any subject we want from whoever we want. But, if you were alive in the 80s, if you didn't go to a college and have access to their math department, you weren't learning really. You likely weren't learning it.
Right.
Like all the abstract algebra Rob and I talk about we're able to learn that now online. It's all available. Yeah. Like that was not going to be a common thing that people could learn. And even math majors didn't take abstract algebra until very late in their journeys.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So it's it's whether it's shadow banned or banned. I don't think that ever changes.
Well, I don't think the desire changes. The terrain and the details change, and a new generation has to step forward to protect math.
Well, you have 10-year-olds today who understand the linear algebra behind LLMs. Like, I'm not saying there are a lot of them, but I'm saying they actually do exist. There are kids who have spent the last several years in lockdown just learning this. Just like there are kids who are like guitar prodigies that you would have never seen before. And it's like the more you have this out in the public, I mean, the Promethean power is with the public, whether they like it or not. And that this game of whack-a-mole is always going on, but it's very hard to hang on to that power. And I think maybe like what you're saying is like, not only is the American experiment like screwed if we try to ban math, but if we're stupid enough to think we can do that in today's day and age, then we're really we're really moronic and don't understand this.
Yeah. It's also because these things are not the nature of this technology is it's not static in America. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. So you're just going to let the rest of the world do this.
It becomes a game theory. It becomes a very difficult game theoretic exercise.
Yeah. I mean, everyone always goes back to prisoner's dilemma. And I'm thinking through that, like, the problem is it's not prisoner's dilemma because you have an adversary of the rest of the world who's not going to cooperate. So it's basically a outcome where your options are shoot yourself in the foot or the head, depending on how you want to diagnose it, or be at the lead, right? Yeah. Because America's on the lead of these frontier tools and has the infrastructure, has NVIDIA, like you have all of the pieces to win. So your options are win or kill yourself. Those are the two options.
Yes. Like I had another boss with another saying that he used to say, if they're going to run you out of town, you may as well get in front of it and call it a parade.
Right.
And this is like binary. It's like you either live or die.
Yeah.
And I think, and everyone is like, agog about China being the source of this open model. Right. But that's just that was like a good chess move on their part.
Brilliant. I mean, also like they're the ones upholding freedom. Right. So like these frontier AI labs take the total human sum of all knowledge and all of the internet activity and train on that data, which was not theirs, create these machines, and then say, well, you can't copy us copying other people. That's not allowed. So China just does the next level of the recursion of the copying and says, okay, well, we're just going to copy you. And now we have it and it's open. You don't control this.
Good luck banning math when we are just making it. We are going to screw that up for you pretty badly.
It's just not going to be sustainable, right? And you're just going to see massive capital flight and talent flight out of America if that actually happens. And there'll be no one else to blame. But at the moment, at least, it seems to be somewhat of a standstill of Washington for being slow and bureaucratic and has not approved anything yet, right? But these are the things I was going down the rabbit hole of scanning all this stuff and just realizing that like this could have been done earlier. Not to mention, actually, on Friday, this past Friday, so August 21st, Anthropic came out with a tool that allows you to run scans on your code base using Claude Code. And I was like, okay, like let's see what you got. So I started poking it around, and I poked it at my own code bases. It didn't really materially bring up anything new that hasn't already been like looked at. And it's pretty good in the of robustly making sure they're only true positives. It doesn't bring about false positives. It burns a lot of tokens. But it wasn't doing anything new. And I started poking it around at specific parts of code bases with like maximum effort. I don't want you to look at the whole code base. I want to look at this one part of the code base and blast it. And it was like, oh, we haven't found any issues. To which I told one of the red team guys, I was like, it found nothing. Can we take what we've been doing and look at this? And sure enough, it was like multiple mediums and lows. And I was like, interesting. The thing I just paid $1,000 for from, actually, no, I paid $150 for this third-party controlled code base. Scanned the shit out of it. It took like 3 hours. Found nothing. And then we used the tools that we've been using with the open source models, and it was finding a shit ton.
It's almost nefarious, though, because they make you like they're going to make someone.
It's a false sense of security. Oh, they're going to make so much money. You're telling me that I can open up Claude Code and hit a button, and it'll scan my code base, and I can say that Claude did it. And now what they're doing as well for enterprise Anthropic companies is you actually can use Mythos, which has been like the God model they've been like shackling behind all of their walled gardens since like March or April. And I'm debating on it. Since it just came out Friday, I'm waiting for a couple days to see people who know this stuff better can tell me, because I'm skeptical. And the reason why I'm skeptical is not that the model's probably better and stronger. First off, I've been part of Anthropic's cyber trust program for being able to do pen testing and red teaming stuff, as well as OpenAI's, for months before this all started. And using the code scanning tool with my trusted cyber access, 80% of my tokens got downgraded to Opus 4.8, not Fable.
Ugh.
So I'm using their tool
Ugh.
in their trusted program, running the plugin that they said uses for security things, and it's mass downgrading. I'm like, this is insane. Like, this is insane. Like,
it's criminal.
What do we,
this is criminal.
Right.
Really.
And so, like, I'm skeptical of Mythos. It would be very expensive to run. So I'm like, someone did it. The one tweet I saw, and maybe something happened overnight. I'll have to look again. Someone said, hey, I scanned my code base with Mythos, and it took 10 hours and cost $10,000 and was really useful. Now, for me at my company, if you're telling me that this tool for 10, like, I'd pay double that for pen testing audits a year ago. You know what I mean? So, like, from a secure, like, we've easily spent over $100,000 just at AnchorWatch across our stack doing different security checks and audits and evaluations, right? Mm-hmm. You're telling me for 10 grand, I could have the God computer come down and look at my code and improve it. I make that trade every time. But what I'm skeptical of is what's the delta between what I'm doing for a fraction of the price with my own tooling than using their tooling.
Plus, you're going to get bait and switched. It's like you're getting bait and switched like crazy here.
Right. I run the tool and I find out after the fact that, like, never mind. Mostly it was the model from 6 months ago, not even like the one from 3 months ago.
And you know, people ask, like, how do you know you're getting downgraded? It's like, dude, you know immediately when you see the fucking result.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're getting downgraded.
Just prompt it to make sure it does logs. I tell it, like, oh, make sure you log what model is responding, so I can just clearly see in the model slug that, like, it's whatever it's doing.
Your spidey sense of what you're getting is like, dude, I could already tell I'm getting downgraded right now.
Totally.
Like, I'm dealing with the idiot at the Bitcoin store. You know?
Yeah, right. And I did get access to OpenAI's Daybreak Blue model. So Daybreak is GPT 5.6 Sol with the cyber they allow you through the first cyber gate. There is a GPT Daybreak Red that is locked down. I don't know anyone who has access to it. I will say GPT 5.6 Sol, like Daybreak, is very good and it's very expensive. So it's very good and it's very expensive. So I am trying to judiciously use it. But my main workhorse are all these Chinese open source models. And from a cost-effective standpoint, I've made this comment elsewhere that since LLMs are inherently probabilistic because they use randomness, right? There is entropy, like that's why if you have 3 people ask ChatGPT how to make a grilled cheese sandwich, you'll get 3 different but similar answers. When you put this into the code security domain,
they'll all say, great idea.
Yeah, sure. They'll all be sycophantic, right? But like you'll get different similar answers, right? And the more complex of the question, the more divergent behavior you'll see. But I describe this as that these LLMs are basically slot machines. And instead of coins coming out, vulnerabilities come out. And how you shake it and how you like guide it is like the main differentiator. And so you're actually, if you're telling me I can get one elite scan for $10,000, or I could run 100 scans at $100 a pop with the open source models, then probably the 100 pulls at the lever are going to be way better than one very good prompt from an elite model that goes through its old cascading thing. Not to mention, I'm fairly certain. So using the Claude Code plugin up to this point, that like you say go scan it does the whole thing. You don't have a lot of opportunities to nudge it or do any sort of like it's like a static process that it's running. And so I can't do things clearly. I have to play and experiment with it more. But
wasn't Alan doing this with the recent mathematical breakthrough? And he was just basically asking it the same question over and over again.
Yes. Yeah, because people were actually making mathematical breakthroughs by just saying keep on going, don't stop, right? By being confident. And there were definitely some 3 a.m. prompting sessions where I was using like the star glitter emoji and being like, you can do this, I believe in you, right? Like there was some fun with all of that. Ben Carmen showed me that, who's helping out with some of the red team stuff. And he was I had multiple people do wellness checks on me thinking I had AI psychosis. And it was one of these things where like, I can't tell you what I've seen, but I know that it's real. But that's exactly what someone with AI psychosis would say. Like, no, me and the machine are the only people who can know. You can't know the truth, right? The proof factor, though, is that like multiple people responding to disclosures saying this is real. Thank you so much, right?
When you're still calling it the machine, you're okay. It's like,
no, yeah, right. I'm not.
Me and Pablo are the only ones who know.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that when you understand the base tenets of the math, it's easier to not anthropomorphize the thing. When you understand that it's a bunch of linear
it's a discipline. Also, it's a discipline to not anthropomorphize it.
Sure, totally.
And that goes before AI. If you've been working technically,
yeah, absolutely. And so it's been absolutely wild. I was now looking to become main character of anything. I was just helping people, and these things happen. I've set the timer now because inevitably I will have my downfall from grace, because that's what happens to anyone who becomes a main character. Which is an interesting observation insofar as I think people who are active and are doing things are more likely to get put into a position of focus. And because all people are imperfect, inevitably you're going to do something that is wrong and upsets people, right? Because we are all imperfect. And so it's been a hell of a 3 weeks. This past week was kind of digging myself out of the trench I put myself in and reorienting myself and focusing. I'm getting 8 hours of sleep again. I'm on like night 4 in a row of 8 hours of sleep. I was only sleeping some nights, not sleeping, and other nights like 2 to 3 hours of sleep. And I'm on the other side of that now. I'm now just trying to figure out the next steps for all of this. Going through reports, making sure people are getting their disclosures if they haven't already. OpenSats has been incredibly generous for helping fund this stuff. So I'm working on taking some of the tooling that I was using and getting that ready to be open sourced, and being responsible in the distribution of that, as well as making sure it's clean software, and getting testing in there. But it's been a very wild journey, and I think I still have to kind of like think through it all. I'll inevitably do some sort of blog series going through all this stuff as an early preview for the Magic Internet Math crew.
If you've made it this far, you get the alpha right now.
When I started AnchorWatch, I personally bought a domain called Risk of Ruin. And I knew that one day I was going to get around to writing a blog series and just putting my thoughts as a place I can kind of like park my ideas and things that I'm thinking about. Tragically, there is an amazing podcast called Risk of Ruin, which is all about advantage players in casinos and sports betting and like housing market and stocks. And like, it's an awesome podcast. Away Slice, Josh is the one who recommended it to me. And I was like, oh, damn, I want to use that. But like, it's a fucking awesome podcast. So I just want to give that a shout out. Like, it's an amazing
it is like podcast. Our ethos. It's the thing that connects us.
Yeah.
And like, it's just in general, it never, like when I got into Bitcoin my first week, I wrote a blog post saying, this is amazing, except I got this one problem, which is the risk of total loss. And right. I remember when I first met Rob, I sent him this paper, and 10 seconds after getting the paper, he's like, I read it. It's amazing.
It's so funny.
Exactly how I think.
I'm actually looking, yeah. No, that's very, I'm looking at our messages right now. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was all the way back then. But yeah, so like, I want to start consolidating, organizing, putting my thoughts down there. I want to go through and think about next steps. I've been invited to the free open source AI summit at Presidio Bitcoin in a couple of weeks. Going to be sitting down with some people talking about, as an industry, I think the cybersecurity stuff has changed forever. I think the next couple of years is highly chaotic as systems migrate and start using these tools to harden their systems. That was a large inspiration and effort for the work we've been doing with the Red Team stuff. Was we're at the moment, this is an inflection point in the changing of the asymmetry of security. and trying to do what we can to at least get things started. Unlike a virus, like you run Norton antivirus scan, you're like, oh, my system's clean, I'm good, I'll run it next quarter. Not really the same. People who
it doesn't
have
do fit for purpose. It doesn't do a fit for purpose scan.
No, like you also having domain knowledge and understanding how your code base works, you're going to be infinitely better at nudging and shaking the thing if you think critically than I'm going to be just doing an arbitrary scan.
I mean, it'd be like scanning your cold card every day. Be like, yeah, it's fine. Firmware's fine, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
it's so operationally everything works the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of learnings of me and how I use AI that came out of all of this. I mean, at one point near the end, I was at 4 layers of abstraction where I'd have an agent, prompt an agent, prompt an agent, prompt an agent. And I would hear people describe it, software development and like work with these AIs this way maybe 6 months ago. And I would thought like, that sounds like either AI psychosis or a slot machine. Slop machine, not a slot machine, a slot machine. Like that can't be right. And
slot machine. I mean, my experience of having employee agents is that every agent downstream from like my direct agent was lazy as hell and did bad work.
Oh, that's great. That's a great point. Because they can be, and I would spend
real Byzantine general shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a really great podcast that What Bitcoin did with Zach Shapiro. So he's a lawyer, and he talks about the leveraging and the use of these AI tools, and basically says that like any ambiguity you leave for the delegation of a task will be used against you. Like you have to be very precise, and like setting up prompts and architecting this stuff. Like I was doing multiple paragraphs of how to architect the next layer of abstraction before I'd go kick it off there. And sure as shit, a lot of the stuff I'm working on fixing right now is because it would find the narrowest technicality and cut through all the stuff I was trying to do and do something inefficiently. So like,
it's like that one employee that always has a fucking excuse that you can't, like, all right, I guess you just came up with another excuse for not doing the work. Like some of them are just, some employees are really good at just telling you why they didn't do what they did. Like, God damn it.
Right.
Always an answer. The slightest, like they find the slightest bit of daylight and they will just somehow, they're like geniuses at exploiting that daylight.
Right. And so I've been learning how to more reliably link these things together, push it through as a full system.
That's impressive. That's that. And then, because you realize, I guess the more you need a lot of foundation to run a complicated, like large vertical AI organization.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like most of the work is then the designing and architecting, which like for software in general, it's you know what it is? It's more true in the AI world because the execution is so much faster now. So it's such a shorter time period. You need to be spending even more time front loading before you even write a line of code of doing a product requirement doc and calling out all the different pieces. And then like doing rounds, like what I would do is like, I would get it done. I'd be like, okay, spin up a new session. You're this is a trivialization, but like you're a solution architect. We're getting ready to deploy this. Interview the CTO on gaps you believe that are there. And I would have the machine back to me once I'm like, oh, it's done. And I'd be like, okay, clean session, no context, new window. Interview me about deficiencies or gaps in the knowledge. And it would grill me and I'll be like, fuck. And then I would do it again. Right. So like that was a lot of the work and effort is just thinking about that. I'm not sure where to go from here though in the podcast. Are there any topics you want to hit or questions or things you want to go over?
No, I think this was good. We wanted to just let you guys know we're here.
Phone from home. Yeah.
And we will be back. I know, like, just for whatever it's worth, Rob, I've been inundated with people saying, oh man, when's the Magic Internet Math Academy going to be like, hitting this Entropy thing and all that. So like, I thought about doing some episodes myself. So that's on me that I didn't do that. You know,
Well, one, you have my full permission. You should like,
of course.
if it speaks to you, man, like go for it. Like a year ago around when you hit me up, I was driving across the country and we just talked for like an hour or two. And all I asked for doing this podcast was I don't have to do any of the production stuff. Like you could handle the uploading and do whatever. And I'm just here to be a supporting character. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't trying to monetize this. I wasn't trying to do anything bigger with it. This has been your baby and idea for probably in some forms before we even met, but like in the instantiation of this podcast, you were working on the magic internet math stuff when I guess it was 9 months ago in December when I was walking you through like the Opus 4.5 stuff and how to like use these tools. And it kind of helped you accelerate achieving this stuff. I'm here as a supporting character to help you do it. And if you want to do podcast episode, like please, like go run with it. I've been telling people, I guess there's a little bit of inside baseball for people listening this long, of like a lot of people reaching out to me and being like, where does Bitcoin go from here? Like, what is the culture? And I realized I did not include magic internet math, but I'll be fixing that going forward. Of one, I would tell people the longer horizon, this is not like anything immediate, but I think the idea of covenants and vault-like architecture, like the nature of Bitcoin is that once a transaction is broadcasted, you have to race the mempool to get money back. If you had any sort of reactive security element that happened during this, the harm reduction that would have been done easily in the tens of millions, if not most of the whole nut, right? And that's not a trivial thing, one, just even from the consensus stuff, but like building the user experience and having users knowledge, having informed and consenting to understanding how their money works. I think there's just foundational things that need to happen. And there's a lot of work to be done there. And AI maybe accelerates the dev tooling. But covenants and more reactive security is an item. There's ways you can do it without a consensus change. So I will not be defeatist and crash out and fork off the network if I don't get my way. But like, I think that is like a North Star of starting to move towards. And the other one I actually said, like culturally, is I said Hell Money podcast. Because like Casey and Aaron are good friends. Their fun, irreverent humor in life, I think, makes Bitcoin more interesting and appealing to a wider audience. I think we've gotten all of the libertarian crypto anarchist cypherpunks already. Like that tent is full and we need to keep on expanding the tent. And I think they have the right vibes and direction. But obviously Magic Internet Math is part of that, right? Getting people impassioned and wanting to learn more about this. And also from a sovereign way of, I'm so hung on your metaphor of going to the Bitcoin store and talking to the manager. Like it is such a perfect representation of the, if you want to promote sovereignty and individualism and doing whatever you like, you can't be a sovereign individual if you don't understand the math. And for not everyone, that's not the answer. Maybe they want to hold it in IBIT, and that's totally fine. You know, like that is a totally fine trade-off if you want the price exposure, not have to worry about the low-level nuance. But if you want to be participatory as a self-sovereign individual, you have to know the math. Otherwise, you're trusting someone else. And I think very tragically, that's what we've seen with this incident. Was like there was not enough verifying among people.
And that's all. It's like we're going to be. I'm fine being the messenger that gets killed over and over about this, but we will. When you're the guy telling people you haven't verified enough, you're going to be the messenger that gets killed on this. But that's fine. Like I'm willing to be that guy.
Yeah.
And you haven't verified enough. In fact, there's nobody that it's, again, you don't know what you call them, demons. I used to call them gremlins. Like, what are the gremlins in the code? And it's like, they're hidden. What are the gremlins and demons hidden in your mind that make you think you're done?
Yeah. Well, this is actually a good point. And for all podcasts, the one that's I think most well received is once this initial like storm started, me and a bunch of the red teamers just started dogpiling libsecp. We just started fucking throwing the things that we were using and finding issues in other code bases.
Yeah.
We were throwing against this, and like nothing bad has come up. But like you would get these things like the severity rankings are like critical, high, medium, low, informational, which is like a doc change. Right. And that's what we're getting like, ooh, you could probably reword the documentation a little bit here and there. You know what I mean? Like it was
it's remarkable.
You know,
insane. It's insane that they like. How is that possible?
The way I've described it is that libsecp is a library that they wait until like multiple peer-reviewed papers come out before they do the next leg of development.
But the standards have to be so much higher than
they're in the fucking
else.
basement. They're in the basement. They're the excavators in the basement. And you've seen the Rick and Morty clip where like they want like to get like a level concrete, and Rick says like, "You think that's level? This is level," and spends like 12 hours like getting perfectly atomic level pure leveling. That's what the libsecp library is. Like that is what it is, and that's like that is something that originally was part of the Open SSL package. And Adam Back actually, when I was tweeting about libsecp, like dropped in a comment that like libsecp is so foundationally solid that it actually pushes against the other systems. Like originally it used the Open SSL library for the signing. libsecp is so like smooth that it actually starts shaking Open SSL, which is like one of the foundational cryptography libraries on the internet. Like libsecp is so smooth, it actually buttresses and shakes up inconsistencies in what the rest of the internet uses for security software, right? Like that's beautiful, right?
It's remarkable. We can't glaze this enough,
right?
That's like if save your glaze,
right,
for this, because just having worked in where I worked for 30 years, and we all wanted I was successful at having a standard that so far exceeded the industry that it was a joke. And, so you'd have some auditor come in thinking they're going to do a review, but we're already so far ahead of any standard that there is. And to do that in a field that has no industry really, like to do that when you don't know what the bar is. And so that you're just so far out there. It speaks to the quality of the people that run that thing. It speaks to the culture over there, and just it's not even a top-down thing. You don't say, "Oh, that comes from leadership." Dude, that comes from literally every bit of gravel in that organization meeting those, right, demanding those standards. It's remarkable.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was important for me too to start looking there, because I think a lot of people, when the cold card was shown to have an issue, lost full faith and confidence in the cryptography. And I had people ask me, "Is this entire industry just like fake? Like, is this not real?" And I was like, "No." Like, and it was very important for me, and I think for everyone on the red team stuff, like poking around, was that it was important for us to be able to very critically look at this. And I had the picture of Atlas holding up the world, and that's basically the way I view it. And I think it was important, at least as a first pass, as someone, because people aren't going to be able to quickly cut up the speed and look at this stuff. And since we were kind of like at the tip of the spear of finding issues, it was important to kind of come out with that. And funny enough, at the time when I was running all those scans, the second cleanest code base was the ORD code base.
It's wild.
Which
really is a clone, though. But isn't that just mostly a clone of Bitcoin?
No, Casey wrote his own entire spec within Rust Bitcoin to do all the ordinal logic. And because this was like in the first couple of days, like me running the initial scans. And the issue that Casey had in his code base was actually something that would never happen, because there was a divergent behavior if you plugged into a different node rather than Bitcoin Core, but Casey only uses Bitcoin Core. But there was a technical logic application bug on his side for different SIG hashes. But Bitcoin Core would never acknowledge it, so it never would have actually happened. But I think it also, like, the reason I talk about Hell Money podcast, like, this was something I said when ordinals got big. I said, listen, Casey outplayed all of you guys. He out cypherpunked you because he didn't ask for permission. He fucking wrote the code and it fucking works, and there's not a goddamn thing you guys can do about it. And he out cypherpunked you, and you're angry because he didn't use it for some sort of traditional application. He used it for all of the ordinal inscription stuff. And say whatever you will about Casey, he's a fucking gifted developer and deeply understands Bitcoin in ways that most people I talk to in Bitcoin do not have that same level of understanding. Casey, if you're going to use the Bitcoin store metaphor, Casey is one of the executive vice presidents of Bitcoin, right near the top. And because there was a conversation around, as a small like about different hashing algorithms, and like he went into like this 30-minute like what would have otherwise been an appendix footnote, if not mentioned at all, into the entire chronology of other hashing algorithms and how SHA-2 and SHA-3 are selected and NIST, and like because he knows his fucking shit, right? And so like I've been friends with Casey since like the ordinal stuff came down. I think he's always been misaligned in the Bitcoin community, and the fact that he just has the fucking receipts and he writes clean fucking code and understands Bitcoin, he's in the basis point. You know, Casey is in the if not 1%, like the basis point level, like tier of understanding the intricacies of how Bitcoin works. That like you can't be giving negative social pressure and like pushing these people out, right? And so
I just want to say, I just need to balance your glaze with the fact that he couldn't get over the hump in Maxi Madness.
He won Maxi Madness. Casey won.
What?
Casey won.
I thought Aaron won it.
Aaron got second place. Casey won.
Oh my God.
Aaron
I just
and Casey.
exposed myself as.
Oh no. Oh no.
I've been saying that she won for the last 3 months and telling people that they're LARPs for not knowing that.
Oh, you're going to make me double check now. I could have swore Casey won the whole thing. Justin, Casey.
Yeah, I don't want to have to do another errata. So
Here it is. Here's the tweet from the Bugle. But like that's what I mean, right?
Who's
like,
wrong? Am I wrong?
Oh yeah, you're wrong.
Fuck.
Damn,
that's the first time I think I cursed on this podcast. Damn.
Casey in the final vote got 62.6 and Aaron got 37.4.
Oh my God. I've been giving all this reverence to Aaron for nothing.
Clear, rightfully so. Aaron was amazing during all of this. I was tweeting out that she was being my Bitcoin Benny Gesserit.
But the other thing I was going to say is people are going to interpret what you just did in the last 10 minutes as you dunking on the BIP 110 Balaki boys.
Oh, so if you're going to say the word, I'll say the word. Yeah, so Casey was doing a whole dive into the Balake.
I don't think you were doing that. I don't think you were dunking on them. I think you just are you're showing genuine respect for game. This is game recognized game.
Oh, this was game recognized game. And the difference between, since you mentioned the difference between a Luke and a Casey is that Casey was able to exist within consensus and Luke forked himself off.
And it seems small, but it's everything.
But it's the entire game, right? It's the entire game.
It's what you did with Miniscript. I'll just say too. I mean, it's like, discovering a way to stay on chain is, it's something.
Not a coincidence that the people doing the Miniscript stuff are closely one hop related to the people doing the libsecp stuff, right? That just like clean fucking something. Yeah, best damn be sure the first thing I started doing again with Kimi was looking at all of our stuff and it's all clean. You know what I mean? Like, good. And it's funny too because.
So I just got to say, Casey getting over Aaron in Maxi Madness, like people were getting violently sick who were going up against her. So like it's just I guess now I owe him some glaze now. I have owed glaze.
I think we all owe some glaze to Casey. I've just been an early glazer, but I think when people are asking me about Bitcoin and where it goes from here, that like I think there needs to be a whole. This is my take. This is my opinion. You can do whatever you want, but like giving him his proper due glaze. I think the Hell Money podcast is one of the best Bitcoin podcasts, if not my personal favorite. Typically, because if there's a technical podcast, I'm going to say 7 or 8 times out of 10, I know the corpus of the information already. And they have fun, interesting conversations and look at things in different ways that I find really rewarding. A lot of my gauge, who I like as people are people who can present something that I'm familiar with and have a whole different perspective. And I think that's like how I judge people I like associating, right? Like math and metaphors. Like it's just it's a rubric I have for becoming friends with people.
They're people that I like hearing their thought process.
Yeah.
Even if it's about how they analyzed the effectiveness of pulling out and things like that. Like I like it's still intelligent. Like there's like a really there's an intelligence. It's not different from when you ask the manhole, like how many manhole covers are there in the world, and you want to hear how they think it through.
Yeah. I mean, this is a reciprocal glazing squad. I'm now realizing because the most recent Hell Money podcast, Aaron specifically was talking about me in a very, very, very kind way. So I'm realizing now this is just instead of value for value, this is glaze for glaze. I'm just going back and forth, but
I don't need to glaze back. We just give glaze to give it.
Yeah, that's right. This is not reciprocal. This is you earned it, right? I'm not going to devalue the quality of my glaze by feeling an obligation to give it. This is just all natural. Yeah, I mean, also like part of that list too is the Bugle Boys, right? Like, dude, like, how long have they been memeing about making sure you get sufficient entropy in your Bitcoin podcast listening?
From day one. I really want to say from day one. And you know what? Like when I went with them to describing Bitcoin in 2015, it was like they were like, you need entropy. You should come to this for the entropy. That's exactly was the conversation.
The Bugle Boys were memeing sufficient entropy for years.
Yep.
For years. Right? There's I think things are still kind of in a shock and a fallout for a lot of people.
Echo chambers are costly, especially if you pick the wrong one, but they're all costly.
Yeah, well, I think the important part is not being an echo chamber. Like on Twitter, the only time I ever block someone is if they block me first, because there's that dark anti-pattern within X where if someone blocks you and you don't block them back, what they'll do is they'll reply or quote tweet you and then block you again, so you can't actually engage. So it's a total bad faith move. So I reciprocally block people only when they've blocked me, specifically to make sure they can't pull that stuff. And everyone,
I should be doing that. I have not blocked. I've been blocked by so many of these people, and I've not re-blocked them.
It's not something I want to do. It's genuinely though, because I've seen it multiple times where a person blocks someone, and the other person's like, whatever, I don't block people. And then what that person will do is they'll unblock, do a quote tweet or like an attempt at a dunk or a snarky reply, and then reblock so you can't engage in conversation.
That's good for my engagement if they do that to me, though. So I think I'm going to let them.
That's fine.
Keep them unblocked.
That's fine. Yeah. But like all of this to say, I think we're in a state of flux. I listened to yesterday Nick Carter's Bitcoin maximalism eulogy thing, and a lot of people are dunking on it. Nick Carter is.
I haven't heard it yet. Okay. I haven't heard it yet.
I think it's a good listen. Like
he's very bimodal. He's like, it either he hits or miss, and when he hits, it's
here's the thing.
Solid. He missed with his tweet about James O'Byrne not having a job and thereby being not a worthwhile contributor to the quantum conversation. He definitely missed on that one, and the ratio got the ratio to prove it.
Well, but
sometimes he nails it.
This goes back to my point of interesting people and hearing their perspectives, right? So Nick, during the whole his star will rise fallout of like his last post about Bitcoin maximalism, I specifically came to his defense because I've listened to Nick Carter since I was in this industry. His weekly podcast of On the Brink, I have listened to religiously since it started. And Nick has been someone, when I was coming up in Bitcoin, someone who I've always appreciated their perspective on things. Always have. I don't always agree with everything. And what I noticed from his blog post that came out yesterday, I think, and he made a Twitter X article too, but on Substack, I was running errands. So I had it in the Substack app as an audio pocket, like to listen to it while I was running around doing errands. What I've noticed from everyone who's listened to that article I've talked to is they'll agree with some part of the article. Like, oh, I didn't like this part, but I like this part. Like, example would be like, oh, I didn't like his characterization of altcoins, but I liked his characterization of stock to flow. Or because he like goes through a very detailed thing. And when everyone was like giving him shit, I just said like, no, like I'm not falling for this psyop. Like I'm not gonna have a whole public fallout and outcry and cancellation of Nick. I am again. I like his perspective, so it doesn't mean I always have to agree with it, right? I didn't like in the article, he talks about the nature of proof of stake being successful, to which I would counter with, fundamentally, proof of stake has a different moral plane that exists compared to proof of work, and I find the moral assumptions and the implications of a proof of stake ecosystem to be irreconcilable with my desires of using a technology. Right? You could say it technically works. Sure.
It's like you'll defend. You like feel like we'll defend smart guys. Some guys are smart and worth defending, but require too much caveating to do it. And
yep.
Like, so for me, I don't go out and defend Nick just because it requires too much caveating for me of like the things I don't agree with. But like, I get like you just want to recognize that smart people are worth listening to, even if you don't like, even 60% of what they're doing.
Yeah, right. And that's
like, remember after Charlie Kirk was killed and everyone felt like they had to disclaim, well, I didn't agree with everything he said, and it took like 5 minutes for him to say, but I thought he was a smart guy. And you know what?
Absolutely.
It's like you could still recognize someone's a smart guy and consume his stuff without having to.
Well, it's also this like thing too, where like in modern tech podcast stuff, you develop these like parasocial relationships with these people, and you start getting pulled into a side, and you start cheerleading and doing all of this stuff. Nick actually mentioned in the blog post that there's actually a deep irony with the BIP 110 stuff, where we basically had the social tactics that are used in Bitcoin maximalism against ourselves among the BIP 110ers, to which I would say they were very much trying to cargo cult it, being like, we're being more maximalist than you guys. And there's a whole debrief podcast on that, but it's not really important at this point. They've forked off, and I try not to dwell too much time on shitcoiners.
There it is.
Yeah.
There's the dunk. Right. I found it.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, it's a great,
in case you're still with us.
Yeah. If you're still with us, an hour and 45 minutes in,
there's something I didn't want to spend time in this podcast talking about that, but like when you're talking about all the red team work that started on July 30th, I just want to point out that there's this idea out there that the reason it failed was because there was a big corporate collusion to do that, right? There's a big collusion among all of these corporate and government entities, otherwise known now as Big Bitcoin. And I just want to say that if you do think that was the case, okay, follow me on this one punchline here, because I think it's relevant. Like, if you do believe that that's the case, and I think that's it's a perfectly valid point of view. It's not. I think it's easily debunked and not right, but I think it's a valid point of view that people like to have. If you're going to have that point of view, you have to also look at the fact that the biggest, the most effective opponents to the BIP publicly were all taken out of the game in the final week. Rob Hamilton, Callie's, the people that are like the most effective
Reindel,
people.
How much shit Reindel got? Reindel was
the most effective people at making. And so, okay, so like, why would they have taken their front line out of the game for the last week? Right. It just tells you how weak this thing was, right? Because like, even with you guys gone and, not telling the truth about this thing for that last week, it's still amounted to nothing. I just want to point that out. Like, so like the A team was benched for the final quarter of this game. That's what also you guys need to know.
Well, I also have my tweet from October 2024.
This is going to be such a good thumbnail with you in this hat.
You should. Yeah, big Bitcoin. Let's do it. Do you want it stacked like this?
Yeah, it's just it's like so absurd. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's so Rob. Yeah. It's the Robbest thing I've seen.
Yeah. Luke was crashing out about. So someone made a point about what are the odds core devs screwed up something by not fixing data carrier size, and had this whole post. This is October of 2024, and I replied, "No, changing how data carrier sire works is also breaking user space. You'll have to fork the protocol, not the implementation of." Sorry, I said no. Changing data carrier size, like which is the op return stuff, is also breaking user space. You'll have to fork the protocol, not the implementation. You actually, for what you want to fix this. Like you can't just do knots. You have to change the protocol. Luke's reply, liar. My reply, Libre Relay proves I'm not lying. It requires a consensus change to fire the miners to stop this. That is 18 months, if not longer, before they're now saying we're going to use a consensus change to fire the miners. So like, it has entirely been a bad faith argument of either people who know better and are lying, or people that don't understand and are being dragged along the way. And I have receipts going to 2024. So miss me with any sort of like, if you're going to come at me, you need to ask yourself why I knew for a fact I was right 18 months before you all agreed that we needed to do what I was saying. I was right. I called it 18 months ago. And before you direct hate at me, maybe have a moment of reflection and just understand, wow, Rob was able to call exactly what happened 18 months before it happened. Maybe he understands something that I don't, and maybe he's not an evil, bad person. Maybe I could learn something. You don't have to agree with me on everything. I'm explicitly asking you to not agree with me and to find plenty of things that are wrong with me. But in this specific domain of all of this like fork drama, I was right. I knew I was right. No one ever came to a reasonable counter argument for why I was wrong. And that should lead to some reflection of just, even outside of Bitcoin, just existing in the world and understanding that people who you disagree with can have valuable insights that you can integrate into your own psyche to be able to learn and develop your own ideas and not to just repeat what other people are telling you. Which is exactly why Casey, Aaron, Nick Carter, all part of the Bitcoin experiment. You should take what they say with a grain of salt, but think about it for yourself.
This is going to get clipped as though it was the only thing we talked about.
Great.
But
that's the thing is we're going to make them eat their vegetables of like an hour and 40 minutes of everything. And then in the last 10 minutes, we can get spicy and close it out.
So I don't know if you're seeing the...
I see him. I see him.
My giggler icons.
I see the giggler. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Maybe don't block the only people that know how your thing is going to go.
Yeah. And there's definitely earlier tweets of talking about this. This is just the most concise one with Luke calling me a liar, me saying I'm not lying, I can prove I'm not lying, and I know I'm right. And now Luke is doing exactly what I said. To be very clear, Luke knows technical details about Bitcoin that I couldn't even begin to understand.
Right.
This is not a claim of knowledge that I know Bitcoin in total more than him. Luke has contributed way more code to Bitcoin. I am now a core developer.
No one's going to clip this quote, by the way. It's going to be like you never said it. No one's going to clip that. They're just going to...
Oh, of course not. No, because it's all bad faith, right? So it's all bad faith.
But I want it acknowledging
with me wearing the big Bitcoin hat because I want them to just fully like get the video clip of the absurdity of the situation. Of course, because it's all bad faith. But as with all internet discourse, it's never about the person you're talking to, but it's about the audience, right? And my hope and attempt is that for the audience that is listening to the engagement of the conversation, that some percent of them can think for themselves, integrate these facts. They don't have to be friends with me. They don't have to even like me. But just to understand that Bitcoin is a deeply complicated system, and because someone has domain expertise in part of it, does not mean that they are able to fully abstract out the complicated system of Bitcoin and be an authority across all domains and things. And so, like I said, I didn't commit my first contribution to Bitcoin Core until this past week.
Congrats, by the way.
Thanks. I mean, like, it's funny because it's all low-hanging fruit things that were just found with some scans I started doing, right? And they're real issues. Like and I even opened up a PR to Bitcoin Knots because it affects them too. Basically, when you review and check out commits, you want to verify that the chronology of the code is tied to like a known tagged release or source, right? So someone's not injecting random code. It's like a very high level version of it. And there were bugs in that where it would actually error out or fail, and it would fail open. So it would, instead of failing and stopping, it would actually continue going. Very fortunately, Bitcoin Core has a very robust human review process that's involved, but this is a belts and suspenders thing, right? And so now anytime that commits are being verified in Bitcoin Core, it's going to run some of the code that I've identified with my clinkers. And huge shout out to Lauren, who has been kind of sifting through the shit of I crank out a bunch of things, and he's looking through and merging what makes sense, because there's a lot of false positives and a lot of things. But like, someone has to do it, and having someone who's I looked in the past year, Lauren is the number 5 contributor to the Bitcoin code base, like over 100 commits. So like, he's someone who's like been doing the work.
Yeah.
Like, and he's been actually red teaming the whole Bitcoin ecosystem for months. He just wasn't being forward about it, right? So he's now part of.
There need to be awards like like Ricky Henderson for these like stats. Like these. We need to be able to celebrate these people.
Well, that was the joke I made, because someone was talking about LibSecP, and I said, like, if you've ever made a contribution to LibSecP, you should never have to buy a beer at a conference ever again.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like that. That's like the level of like, you contributed to the monolith. Like, you found a way to further like smooth out the plane. Like, you are in a special class. You should never have to buy a beer at a conference ever again. Yeah. Like, I also like. I wish Bitcoin Cash didn't fork off. I wish the Blakers didn't fork off, because I think it's better to keep the marriage together. I respect their right to exit, but I think it's better just to have these people around, and we'll see where things go.
I think it's a feature. I really do think it's a feature of like Bitcoin adoption. Like, we have to, if we can be divided and conquered, we must go through that. Must happen.
I think it's important that people who believe that strongly get to exercise that right to exit. 1,000%.
And that's the
like,
biggest
they
thing
the
is
right
they can.
To do it.
Yes,
they
absolutely.
have the right to do it. It is a natural way in how Bitcoin works.
I won't read into your hat falling off as you say that. I won't read into that.
Well, I'm not even really wearing it. It's like balanced on top of my headphones.
Right, people must have the right to do it, and I think it's a feature that it's like cell division.
Yeah,
and it's selection.
My buddy Simple Steve, who runs the Raleigh Bitcoin meetup, because I used to live in Raleigh, talked about this, that this is actually the solution to the Byzantine generals problem. If there is an irreconcilable difference between the soldiers and their orders and like the whole original like layout of the Byzantine general problem, is that not only do you get to exit, up to the point that you had shared consensus, the history is the same. So no one's property rights are alienated. It's truly beautiful. Like, and I think it's a critically important thing that is allowed. I would have made the case that this was not a nuclear button hit moment, but that also is self-selecting, because I am not joining their fork. That obviously I would have that opinion. But I do think it's important that they get to have that option.
I do think the day will come where we do have to hit the nuclear button, and we will need to have had all of these kind of failures to learn from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that it's over and it has no threat anymore, I can reflect on this the way properly.
It's done, right? There's no need to debate things anymore. The debate is settled. Everyone's going to have their own fork and chain. Everyone can get what they want. They got the Balake miners. Charlie Spears had a really good insight of just about like KC2. They were talking about how like in like the ocean ecosystem, like very rarely you'll have these like dead whales that die, and it's a massive amount of like energy and biomass.
Oh, this is the actual ocean. The actual
ocean.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
Okay.
No, not metaphorically. No, like literally.
Not
like,
the pool. Not the mining.
No, not the pool. Not the pool. But like in the ocean, like you'll have like a whale that dies, and then it's like this massive feeding frenzy of them. And what they don't realize is that there are people who've been mining Sia coin, which is what uses the Blake 2B hashing algorithm, for years, and they are now descending on the ability. Like they also described it as kind of like an isolated tribe that had never seen like the larger crypto ecosystem, because that's where they are now. When you change the proof of work, and now you have to hire all of these new miners. They're not the old miners, which is what you wanted, but now you have a bunch of crypto miners who just mine esoteric random proof of work coins.
They weren't doing prime time, and all of a sudden prime time has come and hit them.
Well, it's massively opportunistic because now their ASICs, which didn't have a network like this new fork to mine on, are now there. Not to mention, I think it's been multiple years since the last ASIC, so the next generation of ASICs that come out are going to be such a like you're basically like time traveling in the levels of efficiency of these hashes. It's a scary spot for consensus in a blockchain. Yeah. Those. I'm sorry. I'm speaking out of turn. This was during the Hell Money podcast subscriber Twitter space. So I'm leaking some alpha. I'm sure Aaron and Casey in trade for the glaze are going to be okay with it. But like, it's fascinating. And Charlie Spears like basically understands this stuff all pretty deeply. It was very interesting to hear all that. I sincerely wish them all the best and happiness, and they get everything they want out of their decision. It doesn't impact me anymore. They're in a different ecosystem. They are altcoiners, and I haven't debated altcoiners since like maybe 2020, 2019. It's just not something that is a use of time. I'd rather be focusing my efforts on building coalitions and understandings and educating and enablement within the Bitcoin ecosystem.
We just have enough problems. We got enough problems in Bitcoin. And maybe this is addition by subtraction. It's sad to see friends go. It's particularly, over what I would consider to be I consider these unforced errors personally. And that's why that's why I do this. That's why I focus on teaching the math and the protocol, because I think that's how you avoid unforced errors.
I couldn't agree more. Now that we've gotten through all of the good tea and drop, we made everyone eat their vegetables. Everyone got their dessert. What else do we have on the agenda?
Well, we're 2 hours in. I think we could probably call it. I think we can call it at this point. I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever going to see Rob again. So like, I'm going to just make this as long as possible.
We'll be able to pick it back up. We'll be able to pick it back up for sure.
Awesome. All right. Magic Internet Math in the books.
There you go. See you, everyone.